You are listening to Take Sports, breaking down the NBA game with insight and analysis all in one take. So without further ado, let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome to Saturday, July 19th for the third episode of Take Sports, where we do sports podcasting in one take. I'm sitting here as always with Steve. Steve, why don't you say hello?
Hey, how's it going all? Really excited about tonight's show again. You get teams rounding into form. You're starting to see a little bit more what the rosters are going to look like. So I'm really looking forward into getting into the show. There still are some potential moves to be made. Not all the chips have fallen yet. But I'm just pumped up, and ready to go.
Absolutely, I agree. I just want to quickly remind everyone that we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we have our own website, so make sure you go ahead and you try and find us on social media, and make sure you stay tuned for all of our updates. We like to share a lot of information about the NBA and share our thoughts during the week through articles and stuff too, so definitely feel free to check that stuff out.
No doubt, definitely going to learn something there, and don't forget to like us.
So, first topic of the week. Everyone seems like right now, at least in the NBA, they're talking about Andrew Wiggins, Kevin Love, that whole thing. And, let's not even talk about whether the Cavaliers have said they're going to do it or not, or any of that stuff, because that's not really what we do here. We're looking for more in-depth analysis on this show. What do you think, if you're sitting in the GM seat, would you trade Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love? That's the question that we're asking this week. So, Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, pretty much just like everybody else out there, I've wrangled with it for a while, went back and forth on this, and if you really have to make me give a decision here, at the end of the day, I'm keeping Wiggins. I really need to see what the potential will be, and there's a couple reasons why I'd want to do this, actually. One of the reasons is I'm not sure if Kevin Love is even going to get traded. So one of my scenarios actually has him staying put where he is right now. There's nothing saying they can't pull the trigger on a deal before the trade line this year. But you really want to see how Wiggins would fit into the team. And when you have a star like that, somebody so young with such a high potential, and LeBron pretty much showing them the ropes. You're learning from one of the greatest players of all time. I think you need to see what you have in Wiggins. So as a GM, I'm not giving that up. I'm sorry. And especially with the makeup of this team right now, as the team is made up right now today, a lot of people saying they can be contenders just the way they are. So I just wouldn't make that move. I understand the rationale that Kevin Love, he's already proven himself. He's one of the top 10 players in the NBA right now. I don't think there's much dispute about that. And he would immediately make your team better. But I just see them as sacrificing the future if they do it. They may get a championship. There's a good chance they would get a championship if they picked up Love. One other thing real quick is I just don't see, on the defensive end, why you'd want to pick up Kevin Love so badly when Andrew Wiggins' defense is so good and defense is so important. And I just think for the long-term future of the team, I'm keeping Wiggins. And where do you fall on it?
Well, I mean, I definitely agree with you, actually. I think that, if you're sitting there looking at winning now versus winning over the long term, I have a lot of people who I have sort of had this conversation with, and they're all like, well, Kevin Love isn't exactly old. And that is true. Kevin Love is only 25. He's only been in the league for a few years now. And, that's definitely something to keep in mind, is that you don't have, it's not like you're trading for an old vet. Kevin Love's been in the league for 6 years now. So he's definitely not exactly like, you're not foregoing your long-term future. But the big thing that I'm looking at when I look at this trade is the fact that financially it doesn't even really fit. If you look at the actual contracts that are going into it and everything, Kevin Love is making $15 million a year. Okay? They're talking about trading Andrew Wiggins. The thing that people have to keep in mind is they can't sign Andrew Wiggins before they trade him. The Cavaliers can't. There's a rule in the NBA where if you after you sign a contract, you can't be traded for 3 months. So they can't sign Andrew Wiggins and trade him right away. So his salary accounts for nothing. They're just trading the rights to him. So when you're looking at what they actually have to give up from the Cavaliers side, they have a couple guys who are making $5 million a year in Anthony Bennett and Tristan Thompson. They could give up Dion Waiters as well, and that would get them close. But when it actually comes right down to it, even unless they're giving up all three of those guys, or they're giving up somebody who's making a lot more money, like Kyrie Irving or like Anderson Varejao, they're not really going to be able to make that work from a financial perspective unless they add in a third team, which at that point, that's a whole other discussion.
I definitely agree with you there. Like I said, where you're going with this is also it affects the long-term future of the team. You'll get into a point where if you have Love deep into that contract, 5 years, where does that leave that team with LeBron coming up on 36 years old, and where does it leave the team? You definitely have more cap space. You have more room to improve the team, but as the way the team's constituted now, it's built for the future, and that's what I like. It truly is built for the future, and it's we've mentioned this before, and I can see this being mentioned over and over again. But the way the team's built right now, it's almost in the mold of the Spurs, and it's something I don't do. Now, the one beautiful thing for Cleveland right now, the very good thing they've got going in their favor, is they're almost in a can't-lose situation. Whatever they do is going to be a benefit for the team. Either way they go, it will be a benefit for the team. Because even if they win 2 championships and go downhill, say, in 5-6 years, they won 2 championships. So there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that there definitely isn't. I completely agree. And if you're looking at, if you're looking at the team as it's constituted right now, you said you comparing them to the Spurs, which I think is a little premature, but I see your point. Where they don't exactly have the great power forward that Kevin Love is on their roster, but it's not like they have a bad player there. Anthony Bennett's looking good in Summer League. Tristan Thompson is a serviceable NBA player. No, neither of them are Kevin Love, but Anthony Bennett's young, Tristan Thompson's young. We still haven't seen their ceiling yet. So as far as actually seeing where they can go, they are built for the long term, and they're also built with guys like Kyrie, with guys like LeBron and Anderson Varejao. This team is actually built for both the short term and the long term, which is it's a great situation to be in. Now, losing Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love, I wouldn't necessarily say that defeats that whole purpose, but when you actually add in the fact that you'd have to give up Anthony Bennett, Tristan Thompson, possibly even Dion Waiters just to make it work financially, at that point, I'm not sure that you would have the long-term success that you would with this current team.
No doubt about it. You just took the words right out of my mouth. My point was following up. Losing Wiggins, we keep on talking about losing Wiggins. That's bad. But when you lose Wiggins and Bennett, that's real bad. I don't like that because we don't know yet what Anthony Bennett's going to turn out to be. Summer League means very little in the overall scheme of things, but what he showed coming back in shape the way he came back compared to last year, how anybody comes into camp out of shape in your rookie year is beyond me. But after 1 year, you cannot call any player a bust, especially the number 1 player. Surprise number 1 pick in the draft, absolutely. But he's still a player. What he has shown in Summer League is intriguing enough to keep him around. And like I say, you always have until the trade deadline also. You might lose Love, and so be it. You still got a heck of a team on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and again, like as fans, one of the most exciting prospects is to watch Andrew Wiggins and LeBron James run the court together. That's just, I mean, that absolutely is fascinating, and I think it would be one of the more fun teams to watch if Wiggins turns into the player that we all think and hope that he can be. But either way, that team, with Wiggins, even if he just turns into an incredibly athletic player who can't really shoot outside, he's already shown that he can finish pretty well. So no matter what, as he grows and becomes more of an NBA player, barring injury, he's still going to be a fun player to watch next to LeBron, and he's still going to create some matchup problems at 6'8". So and it's not like they're going to be playing LeBron down in the 4 spot. Not again with Anthony Bennett and Tristan Thompson, Anderson Varejao. That team does have a pretty good bevy of front court players. So they're definitely, in my opinion, going to be playing LeBron out on the wing, more at the small forward spot. So that means that Andrew Wiggins is either going to be learning how to shoot and playing at the 2 spot, or he's going to be literally playing behind LeBron, learning from someone that is of LeBron's caliber. And that just is absolutely, I mean, I can't imagine a better position to be in.
So this is why I like talking about the Cavaliers at this point, because now you are seeing the team come into focus, and this whole conversation absolutely can change tomorrow, but I think both of us are really liking the team the way it's set up, and I still see Ray Allen possibly signing with the team, which just puts another shooter along with Mike Miller there. And, there is something to be said about, LeBron being familiar with Varejao. He likes Varejao. That can only help Varejao's game. And the other thing that I don't like about the whole scenario in a trade as a fan perspective is most of the country is really rooting for Wiggins. There's something about Wiggins that everybody likes. And the thing is, if he ends up in Minnesota, that could possibly stunt his career. And I think it definitely would stunt his career. I don't think he would have the same career as coming into the league and playing side by side with LeBron and learning from one of the all-time greats.
No, I completely agree. Then again, I mean, I was actually thinking about this a little bit, just the perspective or the potential of that team, the Timberwolves team, and Ricky Rubio. I know he asked for max money, and that's a little ridiculous, but he is a very good point guard. He reminds me of almost like a Pistol Pete, somebody who can just find anybody anywhere on the floor. I remember the excitement when he first came into the league as one of the best point guards out of Europe. And again, he just has court vision that can find anyone on the floor at any time. And again, I've been watching a ton of Summer League so far, and him and Zach LaVine, the athleticism of those two guys, plus if you're talking about bringing over Anthony Bennett, that's another athletic big. And I'm just thinking that would be an exciting team to watch too. Now, obviously, from the Cavaliers' perspective, I don't know if it's a great move. But from the T-Wolves perspective, I do think it's a very very interesting and fun team to watch. I don't necessarily think that Wiggins will turn into the great player that he could have been, like we were talking about learning under LeBron, but I do think that he would be one of the better players in the league in a couple of years.
Oh, no doubt about it. I just think I really think just as fans, truly, and people who really like to follow basketball and see good basketball played is one of the reasons why we would like to see him stay there. If I'm a Minnesota fan, I'm dying for something like this to happen. And, like we mentioned earlier, I just think that either way you look at it, he's going to be a really good player. And but in that deal, we keep on coming up with Bennett, and Bennett really is the X factor there. Just losing two or gaining two if you're Minnesota makes all the difference in the world, because he could definitely turn out to be a good player in himself, and they'd have a lot to be excited about right now, no doubt about it. And they still would not be a great team, so they'd be building for the future. They just wouldn't have that superstar that Cleveland would have. So they wouldn't win right now. But Wiggins is going to turn out to be a decent player, I think, either way you look at it.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, if you're looking at it from Minnesota's perspective, I don't know if I necessarily am too, as from a fan's perspective. I mean, obviously, I think fans are looking at this right now and they're going, "Oh man, please let us have Wiggins." 5 years down the road, could they be in another Kevin Love situation where they keep telling fans that they're going to be successful this year, they're going to be in the playoffs this year, like they've been telling fans every year for the last 3 or 4 years, and eventually is that act going to wear thin? Because I think they're building a great base, but I'm not sure if I see this team in the Western Conference Finals in 5 years. And I'm just wondering if that act would wear thin, and if eventually we'd be looking at the same situation. It would just be Wiggins trying to get out of Minnesota instead of Kevin Love.
That's a good point, because they haven't proved yet. Their front offices haven't proved that they have what it takes to build that very good, the great franchise out there. And, I'd almost be looking at it, why, for what they've done over the last couple of years, and you do have somebody like Love, you're exactly right. You could see Wiggins doing the same exact thing in a few years, just wanting to get out of there. And you couldn't blame him. And I can't blame Kevin Love. But it's just, I can't wait to see what happens here. I really want to see what happens. I want it to be over quick. I want to stop focusing on the game. I want to get back into the game between the lines. Right now, we try not to do it as much as others do, but you fall right back into that speculation again. So, on that whole topic, I just say as a GM, I'm keeping Wiggins. That's my MO. Definitely keeping Wiggins.
Well, I mean, I think it depends on, at the end of the day, the GM is sort of an extension of the owner. And the GM actually gets stuff done, but if the owner is coming to the GM, if Dan Gilbert's coming down and he's saying, "Look, I want championships today," I think you need to make the trade. If Flip Saunders out in Minnesota is okay with doing Andrew Wiggins and, whatever other pieces you need to make it work financially, and if Dan Gilbert's saying, "Look, I want championships, I want, 2 or 3 of them, I want them, over the next 5 years," that's got to happen. I think that you absolutely need to go out and make that trade. If he's saying, "No, I want to build a great organization, I want to build an organization," as you said, more like the Spurs, that's built for the long haul, I think that you actually want to hold on to Wiggins and cultivate him as a potential asset, because, again, back to the whole thing, there's nobody better for a rising superstar, a rising rookie like that to learn from. There's no one better in the league than LeBron James.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And I'm just going on what I would do. I'll just go back to, I think right now the Cavs are just in such a win-win situation. And one of the things we haven't really mentioned is that LeBron really does want Love on that team, from all accounts anyhow. And these are all rumors, but you hear the story come up that LeBron already tried to recruit him and so forth. So pretty much this is LeBron's league. So if he wants him, he's going to get him. If he really wants him, he's going to be Kevin Love will be a Cav, and it'll happen pretty soon.
So is there a possibility that we could have LeBron being at odds with the Cavaliers ownership? Because I remember the last time LeBron was in Cleveland, and I don't want to pin it on him, because at the end of the day, the front office is the one making the moves. But because of all of his requests, he almost ran that team into the ground. When you look at the team that he left, there was all, veterans and guys that LeBron wanted around him, and that ended up not being a great team without LeBron there. And, I'm wondering if the front office in Cleveland is a little bit hesitant. I know I would be if I was sitting in the GM seat. I would be sort of hesitant to want to make a team that LeBron wants. Instead, I'd want to, obviously you have to listen to your superstar, but at the same time, I would almost want to craft a team that could succeed over the long haul instead of trying to just build the team that LeBron wants now.
Well, I think at this point, and, hopefully I'm thinking correctly here, and I may be entirely wrong, but I think LeBron almost can look at it the way we're looking at it. The fact that there's pros and cons either way here. But in both moves that the Cavaliers make, there's more pros than cons. That's why they're in that situation. And I think he could see that. I do think he could see it. At the same time, there's this huge pile of LeBron right now that just wants Kevin Love there because he wants to win a championship as soon as possible. He wants to bring that championship to Cleveland. He wants to bring it home. He wants to change his whole perception with the league, and he wants that to happen now. But I think right now they're still in the honeymoon stage, so I don't really see them battling heads too much. And I think he can see the forest through the trees. And if they keep the roster as is, make a couple other small tweaks on it, then take it from there. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely agree with you on that. That if they were to leave the roster as is, or go out and sign another veteran like Ray Allen, I definitely agree that they are set up for future success. But I mean, let's look at it this way. Again, you were talking about looking at it from LeBron's perspective. If he doesn't win a championship this year, he doesn't win a championship next year, what does that mean for his legacy? And, we talked about it on the last podcast. I think LeBron is definitely chasing that legacy of the greatest player of all time. And if he doesn't get there, if he doesn't get a championship, whether the deal for Kevin Love is made or not, I just wonder what that means for him. And I think that's something that's weighing a lot on him because I think he wants to bring a championship back to Cleveland. He wants people to look at the Cleveland Cavaliers the way they look at Michael Jordan's Bulls. And that's, that is a lot for anyone, but it means that they have to be in win now mode from his perspective. And I'm just saying that the management might not want to be in that same mentality.
Then why does management go out and get him also? That's the question. But I see exactly what you're saying, because if he wants to be in the discussion of one of the best players of all time, period, he needs to win the championships. If he doesn't, he will not be in the conversation. You can't put a player, as good as their skills are, you cannot put them into that conversation. You look at a lot of players who never won a championship and where their legacy would be if they did win one or two. Where would Charles Barkley be? Where would Karl Malone be? So it's one of those things.
Where would Tracy McGrady be? I mean, you look at a guy who has been, given a lot of props throughout the veterans of the NBA is saying, I mean, Kobe Bryant has said that T-Mac was the hardest person he's ever had to guard. I wonder what would have happened if he had won 2, 3, 4 championships. That whole conversation would be a completely different one.
Oh, no doubt. But I think I still have it. I mentioned in last week's podcast that I had my number at 2. I'm still holding it at 2, and that's regardless of which way this team goes. I'm just going to throw something out there, and I'll be entirely honest with you. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and maybe you know a little bit better than I do where Cleveland is on cap space right now. But going after somebody like a Greg Monroe, is that far-fetched in your mind?
Cleveland is over the cap right now.
Okay.
Bringing up they are over the cap by $4.5 million right now. So going out and getting Greg Monroe, I believe Greg Monroe is going to want somewhere in the air. Yeah, he's going to want more than $10 million, and that's not going to be possible for him.
It's going to require a sign and trade.
Exactly.
Okay, I see. Because, a piece like that, I was just thinking about it, and he's just happens to be somebody who's still out there right now. And a piece like that might fit well on that team because they do need a bit more front court help. But, like I say, as the team is constituted now, the young players are going to learn how to win because when you have LeBron on the team, they're going to win. They're going to win their fair share of games. So they're going to, and like I said, there are a lot of people out there right now who have the Cavaliers in the conversation of going to the finals. So, we keep on talking about bringing love and winning right now. But when you look at some of the other teams in the East, they're right up there. So they could win now. There's the possibility they could win. As it's constituted today, I highly doubt it, but there is that possibility. they're not far from that conversation.
No, they definitely aren't. And I think that you're talking about pieces that need to add, and you were talking about Greg Monroe, and I was sort of thinking about the team myself. I actually think that they have a lot of front court depth, and that's one of the last positions that if they're going to be pushing cap at all, they shouldn't be pushing it there. I think that what that team desperately needs is a two guard that's reliable, because actually if you look at the statistics for Dion Waiters, he's not a very good shooting guard. Kyrie Irving actually shot better than he did, and he, I believe, shot 38% from beyond the arc last year. And this team just doesn't have an outside scorer, and that, I mean, even with LeBron's strength has never been shooting from outside. Now, he has gotten to be a much better shooter, but having someone who can hit knockdown threes all game long, and yeah, that could be Kevin Love. But I would be more interested, if I'm them, as far as guys that I might want to figure out a sign and trade for, figure out some sort of way to work around the cap to go get. I might go out and go get a Jordan Crawford, or someone who I know is a much better shooter than that. I was even thinking about Aaron Brooks, who's a former Houston point guard. He's a guy that can go out and he could play a very exciting spot next to Kyrie Irving, and can be a catch and shoot shooter. He's a little short, so defensively you'd have issues. But I would be more interested in them going out and getting a guard that can play next to Kyrie instead of going out and picking up someone else that might just fit into a more crowded front court.
Well, they definitely, there's a lot going on there. I actually like, your thoughts about Brooks there. Crawford, not so much. He's so streaky out there. But yeah, you're right. They do need some help at the guard position. It wouldn't be bad to pick up a half decent point guard, maybe somebody who can put the ball in the basket. Back up Irving there. We just talk about the main players here, but every championship team needs somewhat of a decent bench.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and I see where you're going like that. I actually like the idea of Brooks. Decent shot, can put the ball in the basket. That's what you're looking for at that place. Wiggins, defensively, the team might need a little bit of help, but with Wiggins on that team, boy, I'll tell you, that's what impressed me a lot too about his game, is the defense. That's something that gets overlooked a bit with his game. For people who maybe don't study or pay attention to the game as much, they see the high flying dunks, they see the 360 before the game the other night, they see things like that, but they don't see that defense, and that's where he's going to fit into the team really well, in my opinion. So here's hoping that they keep this team together, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a good defensive rookie in Andrew Wiggins. I think that's a good way to get into another really good defensive player who is involved in a lot of trade rumors right now, and that's Rajon Rondo and the Celtics. I've been hearing a lot of, his name come up a lot, with the Celtics basically in a position where people think that they have to get rid of him, which is an interesting take. I mean, I definitely see where they're coming from. But you're a big Celtics guy. What are your thoughts on Rondo here?
Well, I'm actually one of the minority when it comes to Rondo, and whether you keep him or whether you move him. And the segue coming off of LeBron is another one that I actually it wouldn't be so much for. I'd like to see the Celtics hang on to him for a while. Not so much for the fact that he can mentor, smart, be great with the young players, which I do think he's been. I absolutely think he's been maturing of late, and he's a different player. I think he's a different person. Let's put it that way than he was. With the injuries and so forth, we haven't seen him at 100% for quite some time now, and I think a lot of people actually tend to forget how good of a player he is, and that he led the team to a championship. And I think hanging on to him at this point is actually a smart move for the Celtics. I think the way Danny Ainge works the team, I think it's actually a smart move. because, we talk about this. I think we tend to want to see things happen so quickly at this time of year. We're just dying for all the moves to happen. This is Christmas in July for us, and we want to see things happen. But as a GM, you got to think of everything. And I still like the fact of hanging on to him. It's funny, we mentioned Kevin Love. We talked a lot in depth about Kevin Love, and yes, it seems like they're out of it, but you never know, and you especially never know with the Celtics. They could pull something. Uh, you just don't know. If Cleveland, we don't know. There's all rumors, so we don't know what's going to go on with Wiggins and so forth. But um, I say you hang on to him. What you want to do is you want to see what Marcus Smart can do. Is Marcus Smart the guy to replace him? Is he the guy? Do you want him to be your next point guard moving forward? And that's the question they have to ask. And I don't think you're going to get those answers out of summer ball. You're not going to get it out of the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the season. Take it to the halfway point of the season. Let's get to the trade deadline. Let's see what's happening there. The people at the trade deadline, you're going to have other teams that are going to be more thirsty, I believe, and want to give up more. You're going to have teams that are going to be that good point guard away from, making that next step. And in looking at it like, geez, we could pick up Rondo for the stretch here. And I know you and I know you're going to chime on this in a couple of moments. We talked about Houston, and that's one of those teams that comes into play there that, even if they hang on to Rondo, they see what Smart can do. And at that point, I think you get halfway through the season, at least you have a much better idea of which direction you'd like to go with the team. Because the point guards are a commodity. And to just give one up, sometimes you've got to spend the money, and you have to spend the max money. And they're going to be, all the numbers are going to raise after 2016. So his horrible looking contract next year may not look nearly as bad in 5 years like most of the players, most of the free agents today. And I just think if they get rid of him, they're going to get what the Celtics always get, and that's going to be expiring contracts and draft picks. And we know that's what the case would be for them. And the same thing would happen at the trade deadline, so it doesn't hurt keeping them. And I think after trading, after a sign and trade, say after the season, that's another possibility that'll garner the Celtics something. So I'm of the way of thinking they hang on to him right now. That being said, and I definitely want to hear your thoughts. I know in a way that you're going with this, but that being said, I'm a big fan of Rondo. There are parts of his game which drive me absolutely crazy. Love his defense, love his intensity. I can't stand his offense at times, but his passing, obviously leading the league. He's one of the best passers, if not the best passers in the league, and it troubles me to see you give that up. 28 years old. He's not nearly done yet. Many people have come back from this injury. He hasn't shown, he got injured. He came back. They took it slow last year. Last year was getting his feet wet with this team. They knew they weren't going to win a lot of games. So pretty much since the injury last season, you throw that all out the window. Let's see what happens in the first half of the season. That being said, as a Rondo fan, there are a few teams out there that I'd be really excited to see him playing for. And I had already mentioned it once. Houston is a team that keeps on popping up in these Rondo rumors. And that would be, in my opinion, that's the team I'd actually like to see him go to, because that would just be a really, really exciting team to see. How they would all work together, that's another question. I'm not so sure, but I would like to see it, and I'd like to see how they did work together. What do you think about that?
I don't think that he's ever going to go to Houston. I mean, I would love to see it as a Houston fan, but I don't think that they have the assets to go get him. But I can't disagree with you enough as far as hanging on to him. If you are sitting in the Boston front office, or if you're sitting in the other 29 front offices across the league, and Boston decides to hang on to him until the trade deadline, that is like my dream situation if I'm in another front office, because I know that I can absolutely go out there and I can basically offer you whatever I want, and you have to say yes. And you're going to take the best offer on the table, but it's basically an auction for Rajon Rondo. It's no longer a let's make a deal that works for our team. Because at the end of the day, the Celtics are rebuilding. And when you are sitting there looking at a guy like that, and you're looking at, as you said, he's not that old. You're looking at him as a commodity. He is, every team wants a point guard that can create offense for other people like he can. That is, that's something that you should be able to get something for. And if you hang on to him and you just let his contract expire, or you hang on to him until the trade deadline and you have to get rid of him so that you're not basically giving him up for nothing, you get a year out of him. That's, in my opinion, that's not enough. You need to go out there and you need to either get picks, or you need to get expiring contracts in exchange for him. And if you can get somebody that, helps your team, that's a great option as well. As far as what could be, good landing spots for him, because obviously I'm a Houston fan. I would love to see him land in Houston, but I don't think that's going to happen, because, as I said, pretty much the only assets that we have that are worth trading for Rondo are Dwight Howard and James Harden. They're the only two players on his level, and there's no way we're going to give either of them for him. So unless you guys want Patrick Beverley from us, there's literally no one else on our roster that we could trade for him that makes sense. So
it couldn't be a 2-team trade, definitely.
It what?
It couldn't be a 2-team trade.
I don't even know. The problem with what Houston did this offseason is that we had such a bad offseason. We don't have any assets. I'm not even sure if we could get a third team involved and send anything to them. So, that's sort of a whole other thing. Going, as far as potential landing spots for Rondo, one interesting one that I thought of, especially with somebody as impatient and as crafty as he is, an interesting place might be in Milwaukee. And, at first, most Boston fans, and especially Rondo fans that want to see him go be successful, they might turn up their noses at that idea. But what you could do, as far as trades that work, places that have enough cap space, is you can send OJ Mayo and, basically any other player on that roster to Boston for Rondo. You get Rondo playing with the length there in Milwaukee. You have, Jabari Parker, Giannis Antetokounmpo, John Henson, Larry Sanders. I think you have a pretty decent team there. And, with a guy of Rondo's ability as far as distributing the ball around and playing defense in particular, now you have two guys down low in John Henson and Larry Sanders who can protect the paint. You now have Rajon Rondo playing out on the point guard spot. You have Jason Kidd coaching that team. I think that's an intriguing fit, in my opinion.
That's real intriguing, because that automatically that puts Milwaukee in talking about playoffs and so forth. And as Milwaukee is set up right now, they got a lot to be excited about. There's a lot of good things going on in Milwaukee. You watch the Summer League, and their fans and so forth. They're about as pumped as I've ever seen them, really. And that definitely would be a good fit there. I just like I say, the one thing the Celtics really, really need to take a look at, if they haven't already, is, it comes down to you have to move them, because everybody's assumption is that basically if they don't have a winner, or if they don't have a great player this year, that Rondo's just going to bolt, and try to go to a better team, chase a championship. And that might not necessarily be true. He's mentioned time and time again that he really likes Boston. He'd like to stay here. I actually believe that he enjoyed his time. Not enjoyed his time. Nobody's going to enjoy your time hurt. But he really did take advantage of his time on the bench, working with Brad Stevens when he was hurt. And, I think he learned a lot there. And I think he doesn't come across that way, but I think not to sound cocky like a Celtics fan will, but I think he understands what it's like to play for the Boston Celtics. And, you know, that's what I think they have to find out. They have to get a gauge on him. Is he going to bolt? Because that's why you would get rid of him, so you don't lose him for nothing at the end of the season. But I don't think he's even come out and publicly said that he would leave, or not so much. He has mentioned he'd like to stay in Boston, but a lot of players will say that about the team they're playing for at the time.
Exactly, and I mean, I don't think that you can take that risk if you're in the Celtics front office, and even if Rondo stays, I mean, my question is he even a good option to stay? Let's say he does stay and you re-sign him. You already have Marcus Smart. Let's say you go out and re-sign Rondo for max money for 5 years. I don't know if he is still. I mean, obviously Rondo is a great player, but he's not a scorer, and you need to put him on a team with scorers. And if you're spending that much money on his cap, on his contract, and I mean that just gives you a little bit less flexibility. Yeah, it attracts guys there, but I think that the Celtics actually might be better served by going out. And I mean, again, this is like not even talking about just him, whether he stays or goes at the end of the year, as being a part of the discussion. This is just as far as the team's long-term future. I'm not sure he's still a great fit there.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens with him. Like I say, I'm a fan. Obviously, I'm a Boston fan, so I really do like Rondo. I don't think it's the fan talking here about keeping him. Like I say, I just think a very good point guard, regardless of his liabilities, because there are some other things going on in Boston that, might make up for some of that. But, this is where I think if you hang on to him and if you have a really good sense he'd like to stay, but you need to do something, well, that's where the possibility of a Marcus Smart trade may come into play. Because there'd be a lot of teams out there who would love to pick him up also. And before moving forward, I'd like to see if Marcus Smart is that guy. You say that you're going to take less on the dollar, and you will take less on the dollar if you get up to the trade deadline and so forth. But you're also talking about a team that is going to be freeing up a ton of cap space in a team with 18 picks in the next 5 years. The Celtics have assets. They can take a little bit less and not take as much of a hit as another team. There is a lot to say about assets out there. What's tearing you up right now, as a Houston fan, is that lack of assets. We're going to get into that in another podcast because that could go the whole podcast. The things that Houston has done this year. But essentially, they're a team with very few chips there on the table. So, like I say, as a GM, I say you at least go into the season with them and play it out a little bit. Because I'd like to see. I like Marcus Smart. I was happier than anybody when they signed him. But I still would like to see, as a starting point guard, I'd like to see myself. Is this the guy that I want to be my point guard moving forward? And, as long as Rondo's okay health wise, he's still young. Book's still out on Avery Bradley there. But, if you've got those guys locked up, Avery Bradley continues to improve upon his shot with that lockdown defense. I think, that backcourt would be looking good. And at that point, like you said, it always helps to have a Rondo to bring in another player. And the Celtics are a team. The Celtics are just simply a team that goes out and gets players in the draft. They don't attract not in the draft. That goes out gets players in trades. They don't.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the way the Celtics built their last championship team, where they had a ton of cap space and they were able to go out and get it done. And another interesting transaction, a team that should be interested in Rondo, and I never hear them in discussions for him, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. An interesting trade would be going out and sending Kendrick Perkins and Collison to Boston. I know, whatever the front office and Perkins have, I don't know how that whole thing is resting right now. But trading them, you have two pretty big expiring contracts. I mean, that's $12 million total of expiring money that you don't want to bring back. And I mean, you might want to bring back Perkins maybe, but I think he's sort of on the end of his rope. So, that just frees you up. I mean, you got almost, just based on looking at their books really quickly here, I mean, they have 3 contracts that are expiring in the next 2 years that free you up almost $30 million. So that, that's something else to keep in mind, is that you actually might get a piece that, if anyone can bring some good learning experience for the young bigs that are in Boston, like Kelly O, like Sullinger. I don't think there's a better defensive teacher than Perkins, and that's just, I think, a good option for them as far as moving forward, is somebody who can help develop their young bigs, who can show them how to behave like a pro and how to play defense in the pros like a big man.
So where does that leave Westbrook?
Move him to the shooting guard. Everyone's been talking about doing that for so long anyway, and the Thunder desperately need one. I mean, who are they going to start there? Jeremy Lamb? He's been looking awful in Summer League right now, and if he can't do it in Summer League, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it in the pros.
Yeah, that's fairly interesting. I personally wouldn't want to see it happen, but it is interesting, and it's funny. That's actually a real interesting take, because um, once again, that's adding that star that could take a team like the Thunder, and that automatically puts them into talk about going to the finals, because they'd be a scary good team.
That would be a terrifying team.
I love the development of Steven Adams. He's a player I really like a lot there. So that would be really interesting. You got Ibaka, who's so young, also. Um, another team that is building for the future, if they're going to be able to hang on to Durant for years to come. And Durant's such a talent. I mean, personally, I think you do everything you can to keep your player, to keep your guy. But as you've seen, when you are a free agent and you can go wherever you want, that means you can basically go wherever you want. But I could see him sticking around on a team like that. That's real interesting. And moving Westbrook over to the 2, yeah, that could definitely be fun to watch. No doubt about that.
Absolutely. I mean, I just can't imagine how much fun that would be. That would be one of the most terrifying starting fives in the NBA. I think you got Rondo, you've got Westbrook, Durant, Ibaka, and Adams, as you said. I mean, that 5 right there is pretty much. I can't think of many teams in the league that can compete with that.
And they actually they picked up having like a player even like a Mitch McGarry. Um, they make some smart moves. That team definitely makes some smart moves. And they're another one in that, in my opinion, one of that new mold of the NBA. Um, maybe you have a point with Perkins, his expiring contract. I wouldn't really want to keep him around. I think he is. He's got, he's not the oldest guy in the world, but I think Father Time definitely is catching up to him at this point. And so he would be that expiring contract you wouldn't want to keep around. Um, but if he's there for a year or two, after previously playing for the Celtics, if he could teach the young guys. But even that, I mean, and that's going to be another topic. I'm sure we're going to have the topic over and over again. He's teaching the young guys, but he may be teaching young guys that may not necessarily even be with this team much longer or moving forward, because I don't really believe that they have big guys right now that you're going to go into the future with. We're talking about Rondo, getting off a little bit on the Celtics, and there is some good things going on with them. I mean, they got a ton of chips and so forth, and like I said, I just think it's a case of you only got one star. And if you can build around this guy, I would try to do it. I would try to do it. He already was a point guard for a championship team. Had The team had a ton of talent, obviously. They were a really good team. They were well coached. Um, but if they can get a gauge on him wanting to stay, and if I'm Brad Stevens, if I'm Danny Ainge, I'm doing everything I can to get him to stick around.
Well, so let's move on to a guy who didn't stick around, and that's Lance Stevenson, who went down to Charlotte. Uh, as far as fits go, I think he's a great fit for what they're trying to do on defense, because that team literally made it to the first round of the Eastern Conference of the Eastern Conference playoffs basically off of defense alone. They were fourth in the NBA in opposing points per game, second in steals. This is a team that was really possession controlled. They got a lot of offensive boards. They really went after getting to the line, getting the free throw line. They tried to really get inside the arc and shoot points in there. And, they weren't exactly a run and gun team, but again, they're built off of defense, and they actually had, I believe, the lowest turnover rate in the entire NBA, which is a really good thing for that team to build on, is playing smart, playing possession controlled. And I think that Lance Stevenson coming in is a good fit because he's such a good defender. I think he's one of the better defenders at the two guard in the NBA. And so adding him to that team is a great fit, but I wonder where they're going to get the offense from. And that's what really concerns me.
Well, yeah, they definitely need to improve the offense on that team, and I'm not so sure he's the one to do it. I will say picking him up absolutely improves the team. It improves and they were already a pretty good team. They definitely were a good team with what they got going on, but offensively, that is definitely a question mark on that team. Um, he does make them better, no doubt about it. And I think actually, obviously he's gotten a lot of bad press and so forth, and he definitely has some issues. He'll talk too much. He'll do things that'll make you cringe, but possibly being on a team like this, this might be a good team for him to fit. And maybe once again, I think one of the biggest problems in the NBA nowadays, with a lot of these players, is maturity. He's still young. He's still learning. He's definitely showed he can play in the league after 4 years. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He brings a lot to the table on defense. It makes a good team even better on defense, because they were rated up there. But he's either a nine. I think he's a 9 point career guy. So he doesn't really bring that offense to the table. I don't worry.
Right. I mean, that 9 point career, though. I mean, keep in mind that in those seasons where he had the low numbers that were dragging his numbers down, he only played 10 minutes a night.
Yeah, true.
So definitely keep that in mind. But I definitely agree that, I mean, even in his starting role in Indiana last year and the year before, I think that you're looking at a guy who still only averaged around, I think those 2 years he averaged 11 or 12 points a game. So he's definitely not an offensive juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. So, definitely, that team needs to figure out a place to go get offense from.
And I think him going there was really a good move for him. I think he had to get out of Indiana. I think he needed to get away from that, because honestly, that team to me is a bit of a mess, and I think he needed to get out of there. There's a lot about the Hornets that I like right now, and it's another one of those teams. Even though I'm not entirely crazy about Kemba Walker, he's decent.
Don't bad talk Kemba Walker to me. I love that kid.
I know you do. I just don't. Like I say, he's a decent point guard. I think there are definitely much better point guards out there. Some point guards with potential, a ceiling much higher than his. Um, I honestly, I love the way Al Jefferson played last year. He was a beast. He was that team leader last year, and I don't have to tell you, you know that I like Noah Vonleh. You know I like him a lot, and you got Cody Zeller over there. Unfortunately for the Celtics, the Hornets got the good Zeller. So, they got a lot. I think it's a really good fit. It almost came out of nowhere, but when I saw it, started thinking about the way that team is pieced together. A really good fit. Offense, like you say, offense is going to be a bit of a problem. I don't know how quickly Vonleh will develop. That will help, no doubt about it. They still are one of those teams that is not quite there yet. Even as they're put together today, I don't think they're quite there yet. They need an infuse of offense. And there are a lot of very good players in the NBA that if they ended up on that team, they would be a real, real good team.
Oh, if that team were able, and I mean, I don't think that there's any way that they could make this happen, but if this team can figure out a way to go out and get Kevin Love, this team is terrifying.
Yeah, I don't think they'd have exactly what it would take to get him, which is one of the bigger problems out there with pretty much anybody getting them. But they would be extremely terrifying.
I mean, the one position of real weakness on this team is the lack of a power forward. Lack of scoring is the other big thing, and if you go out and you were to get somebody like Kevin Love, you'd kill two birds with one stone.
Definitely, and some of his defensive deficiencies can be hidden on that team.
Oh, absolutely. That team is so good on defense. I mean, I remember watching them towards the end of last year, and the rotations that they had were impeccable. They're just really well coached, and I think that they have the right leaders in place. I think Kemba Walker is one of those leaders. And Al Jefferson, as you said, is another leader on that team. And both of those guys do a great job of setting the mindset where defense really counts.
And the other thing is too is you don't know. Like we said, I mentioned his career numbers, and it's going off. Not barely playing the games earlier in his career. I mean, this was one of his takeoff years. But there's still, with 4 years in the league, there's still room for him to grow offensively. No doubt about it. In his own mind, he's one of the best offensive players in the NBA. In his own mind, he's the best player in the NBA. But that may not be the worst thing. I'd rather have somebody have confidence than that lack of confidence. So I like it. I think it was a good fit both ways, and I think he needed to get out of where he was.
Agreed. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the Pacers come into this season without him. If he was the reason that team wasn't really holding it together and wasn't able to compete in the playoffs, or if it wasn't him and there's still some sort of cancer in that locker room or something going on in that locker room that's causing the dissension on that team.
There are many problems on that team. Almost too many to name. We've touched upon it before. And I totally would have been embarrassed to be a Pacers fan last year. And it isn't. It's hard to say. Like you say, sometimes it's enough for one guy to be that issue. But I didn't see that last year. I saw it more. I saw it more of internal team issues, and I don't believe it was brought on by Lance Stevenson.
I mean, he can be so off the wall crazy. That's what makes me wonder that, I mean, I'm sitting there looking at that team, and I can't imagine. The only thing I can imagine Paul George really bringing as far as locker room dissension is, the whole TMZ thing where, that's a whole other thing. But where he's basically getting too big for his role in Indiana. I just don't know what happened to Roy Hibbert. I can't imagine anything besides one of his teammates getting on him about something, leading to that kind of decline in one of the up and coming rising centers in the NBA.
Exactly. That's why, maybe a lot did come from him, but like you said, you touched on Hibbert, and exactly, it was almost like a full team meltdown in the playoffs. And, we're not inside the locker room. We don't know what goes on. And, and I just, they're a team. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words with the amount of talent that they had. And, in their case, probably removing somebody like Stevenson, is not the worst thing. They went after him somewhat. But, I don't think they're crying over there that they lost him.
No, absolutely not.
And I think I just think the fit's much better now for him personally. And, who knows? Indiana is still a good team either way you shape it. They've got the talent there. Very, very interesting, like you mentioned, once again, Hibbert in that confidence loss. Really what it was. And you saw in the playoffs, but he only turns it around for one game where he says, I need to be a different player. I need to be who I am. And he goes out and he has this great game. But then you don't really see it after that. So, as well as anybody that once the game gets in your head, you're in trouble. And that's what basically happened to Hibbert last year. The game got in his head. He lost his confidence, and it was just a meltdown on his part right there. They got some pretty decent.
Well, hold on
pieces.
a minute. So I know we're running out of time here a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you. Is there another occasion that you can remember of a guy that has run into that, where you remember watching him play the game and it was just like, he got just like he went into a slump and the game got into his head, as you said, and that was it. Is a guy like that, if you have seen that before, are they able to typically pull themselves out of it, or is it just, did we just see the end of Roy Hibbert's career?
I don't know, because you have to see what he's going to do this season. There aren't too many players out there that I can think of that it's happened to. I can't, and it's something I haven't really put much thought into it. Maybe like a Penny Hardaway comes to mind. That I think the game got too much for him. He had some other issues, he had some injury issues and so forth. But, he was one of those players who was just supposed to be so great. And one way or another, the game got into him. He blew up. He was all over the TV. He had the ads. I don't know if you ever remember the ads with Little Penny and so forth. And, he was a player who was supposed to be just one of the great players. And at the beginning part of his career, he was, and something happened to him. But I can't, like a meltdown like in the playoffs last year with Hibbert. That's the thing. It was strange to watch. It was watching a train wreck. It was very uncomfortable to even see. And I think all players are going to go through their slumps. Any great player, especially shooters. If you throw shooters into the mix and you talk about slumping, I think what actually separates, and I think what separates the great players, are the ones that showed success playing, and they know they have it. So as bad as you're playing, eventually they will turn it around. And it's the great players with that attitude, the shooters who are going to continue to shoot, no matter how, what type of slump they're in. Some of the greatest shooters of all time have been in these slumps that have been absolutely awful. Ray Allen comes to mind. He's not that shooter every game. I've seen him go into some falls for a lot of games at a time, but he keeps on shooting and pulls it out. And I don't know if it's an age thing with Hibbert. And I think you would see when the game gets in your head, I actually think you see that a little bit more with big men. And I think that's the point where they just need to, really step up on the defensive end. a lot of times you can pull yourself out of some of your offensive funks and so forth by playing great defense and letting the game go to you, come to you. You know that also. You get in a funk, and sometimes you try and bring it to the game some, and you just try and overdo everything. So what I want to see moving forward is I want to see how he comes out the first half of the year, because if I'm him, in my own mind, I'm spending the summer making sure something like that just doesn't happen again. He needs to realize that he's got a ton of talent and he could be one of the better centers in the league.
I think honestly, with his size, he could be the best center in the NBA if he, keeps his head right. And when I've seen Roy Hibbert play, his amazing, because he actually has games occasionally where he looks like he is the best center in the NBA. And on average, he doesn't play like that. He's not as bad as he was in the playoffs, but he's definitely, I would say he's probably in the top 15. But there are definitely games that I've seen him play where he just absolutely rises up, and I just we don't see centers like that much in the NBA anymore.
No, and I think that's what keeps us scratching our heads. It's really frustrating to see somebody like that, and when you show those flashes, and it's not just a flash of, wow, what a great play, what a great block, whatever it may be. This is more like, what a great game, or what a week Roy Hibbert had. And he seems to be that player right now that, this guy could easily become a player of a week, or he could be a forgotten guy. And he's got to come up with that consistency. And I actually think most of his game is in his own head. I think he just loses confidence in himself. Like I said, when he came back and said, I need to change my game, I need to play like the player I know I can be. He can go out and do it for very short stretches at a time, but very short stretches aren't going to get you anywhere in the NBA. You need to do it consistently. I mean, consistency.
Well, the thing with him is I wonder a little bit about his motivation, honestly. I remember when he came into the league and he was really out of shape and he was overweight. And I remember there was an off season, I think 3 off seasons ago, where they talked a lot about his off season conditioning and how he came into camp that year in great shape, and they thought it was this amazing thing. And it was sort of like, well, it took him a couple years to actually, for that to click in his mind, where he actually needs to put the work in to be an NBA player. And it just makes me wonder a little bit about his motivation to be, because again, I think he could be a great center in the NBA. I don't know if he's going to go down as an all-time great ever, but I think that he could be a dominant force in today's NBA. Especially, he's one of the few starting centers over 7 feet tall, well over 7 feet tall, and with his ability, I think that he should be there. And it makes me wonder a little bit about his motivation to be the best, or whether he's just content with, hey, I'm 7'2", I'm going to be a starting center in the NBA pretty much no matter what I do. So I'm just going to do that, and that's going to be sort of his baseline, is that he just wants to make sure he retains his starting job.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt about it. And like all facets of life, I know as a fan it can become very, very frustrating to watch. But I think we all know, in all facets of life, you've got some guys out there who are just lazier than others. The ones that always make it to the top are the guys that are willing to work, to put in that hard work. And, then there are others, like you say, he just might be one of those guys perfectly happy, just floating along and letting his natural talent continue to dictate that he'll have an NBA career. I mean, when you have his size and so forth, when you have that natural talent, he's not in risk of not having a job. Yet he can float along, and it seems like he's just one of those players that just doesn't have that drive that some other people will. And not having that drive, and I think why we end up talking about him so much is because we see that potential, and it just drives you a little bit crazy to see.
The thing that just went through my mind is, can you imagine Kobe Bryant's mind in Roy Hibbert's body?
Exactly. Enough said right there. enough said. Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, to have that mindset, and you can almost see like in the locker room even before the game, I have no idea. Maybe he is, and maybe I'm completely wrong. But you take somebody like Kevin Garnett, who before that game works himself up into a frenzy to play the game, and I just don't see it with Hibbert. And hey, I guess if he's happy, but I wouldn't. It's one of those things that you still want him on your team because of the natural talent, the size, but just get you extremely, extremely frustrated. I know tonight we wanted to talk upon, and we might not get as in depth as we thought we would because of time constraints and so forth. But we did say we wanted to talk, a little bit about the state of the Heat, real quick.
Well, I actually think that we should just. I actually want to get into that a little bit more in depth. I think the listeners would much prefer us to actually be able to devote the proper amount of time to a topic like that because I think it's a deeper topic. Why don't we save that for next week? And we'll definitely be able to cover it in real detail and really be able to offer some good insights, and opinions on that.
Yeah, I'm game for that. I'm game for that because they are. They're becoming one of those, I won't say forgotten team, but it's almost like as soon as LeBron left, everybody pretty much gave up on the Heat. And one of the reasons that, I definitely would like to talk about it a bit is that may not necessarily be the case, that they're out of any type of conversation, being one of the better teams in the league. And you're right. We're probably going to get into that. There's a lot more to talk about on that end of things. So you're right. We can hold that off for a week, unless, of course, Kevin Love is playing for the Cavaliers, which would make every week we do this talk about the Cavaliers. And I never thought, if you asked me 6 months ago while we're doing this, if we're going to be talking about the Cavs every week, I would say not a chance. But here we are.
Well, let's quickly go back and forth. I know we want to end on our last three thoughts, sort of quick hitters around the NBA. I know that my main three are, and I'm sure that we'll get into this at some point further down the road, but I just want to defend Daryl Morey really fast because we have had a terrible offseason in Houston. That is not a secret to anyone. We went into this hoping that we were going to get, at first it was, Melo, then it everyone got their hopes up thinking might have a chance at getting LeBron, sort of rested on, hey, maybe we're going to go out and get Chris Bosh. All the Houston fans got so excited by that prospect, and then we ended up just losing Chandler Parsons and Jeremy Lin, Omer Asik, and all we got out of this whole offseason to show was Trevor Ariza, and that's a F offseason right there. I'm going to go right ahead and say that. If you're looking at offseason grades so far, Houston Rockets definitely have an F. The one thing I will say is that Daryl Morey, he's I don't think that he was in the wrong to do any of what he did because he had to swing for the fences there. And he missed, but that wasn't necessarily on him. That was just other people making decisions to do things that didn't line up with what he was thinking.
Well, I got a feeling next week we might be talking a little bit about the Rockets along with the Heat there. Real quick, I'm just going to throw out, yes, they did get an F on the offseason, but in my opinion, he gets an A in effort.
Well, that only counts in that phrase, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I think that, at the end of the day, you are graded on results. I don't think that team is necessarily out of the conversation for anything, sort of as you were talking about the Heat. They still have arguably the best shooting guard and arguably the best center in the NBA. I don't think that the hatred towards Morey that he's garnering right now, I don't think that's warranted. I think he's still, Morey the genius. He just, you can't always account for what other people are going to do. My other the two other things that I really want to touch on real fast are Kendall Marshall, who is one of the sort of lower named free agents floating out there right now. He was released by the Lakers. And this kid is actually a very good point guard. He was second in the NBA in assist ratio, only behind Chris Paul. That puts him ahead of Russell Westbrook. That puts him ahead of a lot of really good point guards. And he's been, basically riding the bench for most of his career, most of his time in LA. I think that it would be really interesting to see a team that is looking for a more of a passing point guard who, has scorers around them. Again, we're sort of talking about teams that need a point guard. I think it'd be interesting to see him fit on a team that needs one of those. A great fit might be down in Miami because they do have some players down there. I don't think Shabazz Napier, just watching him in Summer League, I don't think he's quite ready for the NBA yet. I think Kendall Marshall might be a good fit down there. There are a couple other good landing spots, but that's just one of them that comes to mind. And finally, I just want to touch on Summer League real fast and say, we talked about it a little bit a couple of weeks ago about how exciting it is to see the direction the NBA is going in. And just watching the depth of who has come out in this past year's draft is just absolutely incredible. I've been watching, and Parker and Wiggins, they haven't necessarily blown me away. I haven't been sitting there thinking to myself, wow, these guys are absolutely going to be transcendent players. They weren't going out and dropping, 35 a game. But the thing that really does get me is, again, how deep it was. Again, I'm a Rockets fan, so watching Nick Johnson, I haven't missed a single Rockets Summer League game. I think Nick Johnson has had one bad game. The kid looks like a real pro, and he was taken 42nd overall. There are guys like Russ Smith, who was taken by the Pelicans way deep in the second round, who is right now looking like one of the best performers of the Summer League. And I know the Summer League doesn't account for much. You're looking at guys who do great in the Summer League, and then they have terrible NBA seasons, or they don't end up doing anything at all in their career. But just looking at watching these kids play, I think that there's really a great outlook for the NBA, and I'm just really excited to see where everyone goes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That was one of my things I wanted to touch on real quick is Summer League itself, and I absolutely agree. A couple of the other names out there that you didn't even mention was, say, Nerlens Noel, who might have been the overall, one of the better guys coming out of Summer League. Doug McDermott, he shows that he can belong in this league, and going to.
I just want to say really fast that I totally said that he was a top 10 player for sure. I actually had him in top 5 in my pre-draft board. I think that he's absolutely fitting that bill right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you know what? Kudos to you. You definitely had him higher on your draft board than I did. And he showed, like I say, he might be one of the guys too, who is so going to benefit from going to a good team. That there's a lot to like with his game right there. A couple of these other guys, such a deep draft. I mean, you get Jordan Adams, Elfrid Payton. I know you like him a lot. He had a heck of a Summer League there. And one of the other things I just wanted to touch on, I did a little bit earlier this evening, but the Bucks, they're moving in the right direction. They do have something to be excited about, and like you say, maybe Parker, and so forth, didn't shine the way everybody would think he would in the Summer League, but it still is Summer League, and he had, he's had some moves. He's definitely got much better quicks than I thought he actually did have. I mean, I don't know if you saw the reverse dunk he had the other night. It was insane. So he's got the ups. As a fan, I'm really excited to see him. On the Summer League, like you said, there are going to be players. I'd almost guarantee there are going to be players coming out of the second round. You're going to see an all-star, possibly an all-star or two coming out of the second round this year in the future. Such a deep draft, just a really good draft, and that's what's made watching Summer League ball so enjoyable this season. More than any other season, I was really tuned into summer ball, and normally it's me watching the Celtics. But there was a reason to tune into every single game out there. Everybody. I mean, one of the teams that nobody would expect in summer league to do so well and have so many players doing so well was the Knicks. They were very surprising. So it was fun to watch. A couple of my other points that I was thinking about this week is I have no idea what the Lakers are doing. It's very, very sad seeing a team like the Lakers right now. And, it's so unlike, you're talking to an old time guy here. And, I look at a team like the Lakers on par with the Celtics, being those all time great teams. And, seeing the Celtics and the Lakers in the last few years, it really is sad. I mean, Kobe got that ridiculous contract, which I have I'll just never understand that. Picking up Boozer, I have no idea. It seems like I just don't know what they're doing, and it blows me away. And it really is actually sad to see. Difference I see between the Lakers and the Celtics right now pretty much is, even with may or may not be moving Rondo, the Celtics do have a direction. At least we know what the Celtics are doing. They're rebuilding. Um, I think somewhere along the lines, the Lakers believe that they're trying to win now, but it's beyond me. So you know, I I want to see where everything shakes out on that team, but right now, it's something that's kind of sad to see. And just looking at a couple of the other free agents is still available out there. Being my last point, you get your Eric Bledsoe still out there. You got Monroe I touched upon. You got Evan Turner. These are some of these players out there. In my opinion, one of the problems and why I don't believe they're signed teams at this point is they're the type of player. What's the value? It's so hard to put a dollar mark on what these guys bring, and you're not sure where they're going to be. I mean, I'm awful intrigued by Monroe, but it seems to me like there are a lot of teams in the NBA that are afraid of him right now. I know all these guys are probably asking for more money than what the teams have them valued at, and that's where I think some of the stalemate's coming in. So, it'd be interesting to see where they end up, and almost as interesting as where they end up is, but how much money they're going to sign for, because that'd be one of the questions I'd be asking myself as a GM, and something I'd be wrangling with is, what is the value on a Greg Monroe? Boy, that's a player right there that's got a lot of risk and reward to it. But there aren't too many free agents left out there. You know, there are a couple good players, but there's not that many. Obviously, there's a couple players out there that could be traded, namely Kevin Love. But I really like this time of year. What I like the most about it is you get to actually see how these teams are shaping up, and this is the time where guys like you even more than me, but really like to delve into what this is all going to mean on the court. So, um, you know, free agent. Free agent time is really fun. Things are happening fast. You're always checking your Twitter. You want to see what's going on. You want to be the first to get the news. But I really think at the end of the day, the fun to me is putting these teams together and seeing how guys are going to work together and seeing the direction of the team. So that's what I got for this week. There's so much to talk about. We could have these podcasts going for hours. So that's what I got for this week. There's definitely going to be much more to talk about next week.
Absolutely. I think that I'm definitely excited to see what's going to happen this week, especially with regards to some of the moves that seem to be in the books or sort of on the burner here as far as what's coming up next, as far as what we're going to be covering next week. But we definitely will make sure that we cover the Miami Heat next week, since we were going to do that this week. And for people that tuned in to maybe hear our thoughts on that, we want to make sure that you tune in next week to hear that too. So we'll definitely get to that. But it was nice talking to you tonight, Steve.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. I love what we're doing every week. Hopefully in the future we're going to continue to bring this to the good folks out there every Monday morning, give them something to think about for the week. And, once again, looking forward to doing it again. And I always hate shutting off and logging off because there's just way too much to be talking about. You and I could do this all night long. So it's been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Have a good one.
You too.